Welcome, birders. This is Ed Pullen, your host on the Banter podcast, where birders talk birding. I've had a really good past week of birding. I got east of the mountains. In Washington, some people think we almost have two states. The western Washington, where it tends to be wet and rains a lot in the winter, and eastern Washington, where it's a lot drier in the rain shadow, and you have higher elevation and big open areas and a lot of sunshine. So I got to eastern Washington in hopes of getting some first-of-the-year species. Many birders, myself included, try to come up with a good list for their home state every year, and I'm working on my Washington list this year and got a chance to get out and see some first-of-the-year species, or FOY species as we call them. Just so non-birders understand, FOY means first of year, and it applies to an area. So if I saw a bird in Pierce County, my home county, for the first time in a calendar year, it would be an FOY species. Now, if I had not seen it anywhere in the state, it would be an FOY state bird. But if I'd seen it somewhere else, it would just be an FOY county bird. So I was out to get some FOY state birds. So the first night I stayed in Leavenworth, and right from my bed, heard a long-eared owl hooting. They have a very distinctive, low-pitched, single-noted hoot that nothing else really around here sounds like. And it was nice to get my first FOY bird of the trip without even getting out of bed about midnight. From there, went on to Wapato Point, which is near Lake Chelan, and stayed there for a week. Really nice to get some sunshine and some relaxation, but I really got quite a bit of birding in, too. Highlights of the time in eastern Washington were a trip up to the Sun Mountain Lodge in Winthrop, where I was hoping to get dusky grouse, and sure enough, dusky grouse was right in the parking lot, a male displaying. Did not like my car being in the parking lot. It's a time there when not much is happening. Cross-country skiing isn't very good. The snow's mostly gone, and yet it's not really very nice weather-wise for other reasons to be there, so not much was happening, and there weren't many cars there, and this grouse did not like my car in the parking lot. Came right up, tried to peck at the tires, and when I got out to take a picture, came up and pecked at my feet. So got my dusky grouse. Little video on my Facebook page you can see if you like. And after that, we picked up a few things here and there, but the other highlight was really the drive home. I had expected to go to the Quillamere wildlife area near Vantage in hopes of picking up sagebrush area birds. But on the drive, I went down through Moses Coulee, and on Moses, I think, Coulee Meadow Road, there was a really nice sage habitat, and birds seemed to be flying around. So I stopped and got out and just hit the jackpot for sage habitat species. Sage thrashers seem to be just singing everywhere. They're just back. Last weekend, birders who went out didn't get them, and this weekend they were just everywhere. Brewer sparrows were singing. They've got this incredible song. Check it out. It just goes on and on and on. And I'll actually put a link to that. Maybe I'll just put a recording of that in the outro part of this so that you can listen to it. But it's really an incredible song. And in addition, got a sage sparrow right up close and personal, got vesper sparrows, mountain bluebirds were flying around. So really wrapped up the sage species right there. I'd already seen a loggerhead shrike earlier in the week. But just a terrific week in eastern Washington birding. On to this episode. This week, I have John Sterling as my guest. I met John first when I went to Kenya about 3 years ago, and he was one of the trip leaders. And he is just a very interesting guy, a superb birder, a really good photographer, and just seems to know everything about everything. He's just a smart guy. And in addition, is a really good storyteller, so I think he's going to be a great guest. You might remember in episode 3 of the Bird Banter podcast with Bruce LaBar, we talked a little bit about a website by Don Roberson called The Who is Who of California Birding, 1965 to 1989, a quarter century. Bruce was mentioned on a couple of the photos on that site, but my guest today is one of the featured 40 birders during that time period. He's actually younger than most of the birders mentioned in that time frame, but is flattered by Don Roberson as being one of the birders who not only participated during that time frame, but really helped bring a new generation of birders into the mainstream of birding in California after 1989. I met John Sterling again on the recent pelagic birding trip that Ken Brown and I took in the San Diego Birding Festival in March. And John was headed off the next day to a birding competition in China. And that's a great story you'll hear about during this podcast. But in addition, he agreed to be a guest on the podcast after he got back from China. So he's back. We're ready to go. Hey, John, welcome to the Bird Banter podcast. Nice to have you.
Glad to be here.
I'm really excited about the bird race you went on in China. But before that, maybe you can tell us about your how you got started in birding and how your career's progressed.
Okay, well, it kind of started before I was birding. When I was in second and third grade, I got into butterflies, and that kind of trained me to be excited about learning how to identify things in nature.
Sure.
And it kind of piqued my curiosity. My dad was a high school biology teacher, so he had a few books lying around.
Yeah.
He was not a birder at all, but he did have a few butterfly books and plant books.
Very nice.
And I got into plants and learning wildflowers and trees. And then by the time I got into the fifth grade, we had a fifth grade environmental education camp for a week. And one of the teachers showed us a pileated woodpecker, and he was so excited. And he said, "This is a lifetime experience, and look at this bird." And so I got caught up in his enthusiasm. And I didn't really see the bird very well. It was on top of a tree. We didn't have binoculars.
Sure.
But when I got back from the camp, I went and the next day I bought a field guide. It was the Golden Guide to Birds of North America by Chan Robbins.
That was my first guide too. Yeah, very nice.
And I just started looking at all the woodpeckers, and I thought, "Oh, look at all these other woodpeckers." And my grandparents loaned me a pair of binoculars, and I went and bought the Life Histories of North American Woodpeckers by Arthur Cleveland Bent.
Oh, wow.
And started reading about all the subspecies. So I started getting my parents to take us to Mendocino, where there's a different subspecies, a hairy woodpecker.
Mm-hmm.
And before, the end of my first month or two of birding, I started looking at all the other books, all the other birds in the book, and realized, there's a whole world out here of birds. And that got me started. And then by the end of the year, I pretty much memorized the field guide.
Uh-huh.
And took off from there. And about 2 years later, I met Mike Parmeter, and he had a son, John, who was a year younger than me.
Okay.
And Mike was one of the top birders in the state and knew a lot of the top birders in California at the time. This was back in 1973.
So you got started really young. Yeah.
Yeah, I started when I was 11, and so
very nice.
1971 was started. And so he started inviting me on these trips because I bird with his son.
Yeah, it's a great incentive. Sure.
It was fantastic. So I got to meet a lot of really great birders, and also my parents were really influential in giving me a lot of taking me around on a lot of trips, driving me, but introducing me to people. And when I was 13, I went on a trip to Arizona with Rich Stalcutt, who's one of the, the gods of
big
birding.
Name, sure.
Big name, especially then. And he was extremely influential in my life, and was birded in a way that a lot of other birders didn't really interact with birds. And he really knew the natural history and behavior, and really had amazing insights on all the species. And
so you got taught right from the beginning.
Yeah, I got lucky, and it was because my dad really he saw that drive in me and wanted to introduce me to people who when he found out about people, he wanted to introduce me to those people.
Sure.
And that was a huge deal.
Yeah. Like a lot of us, you won the lottery with your parents. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah. In fact, when I was 13, I talked my dad into taking me to San Blas, Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And we went there, didn't know any Spanish, and we ran the car, and I found this book, finding birds in western Mexico,
mm-hmm.
and all these maps. And so we just went there on our own, and It was actually after that trip when we saw a talk by Mike Parmy at an Audubon Society about his trips to Mexico.
Oh.
That my dad said, "Okay, I need John to meet this guy." And he was
Sure.
a doctor at the Kaiser Hospital in Napa.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to his office and I sat down and I started talking to him about all the birds I saw in San Blas, Mexico. And he was a 13-year-old, and so he was impressed. And that's kind of how I met Mike.
Nice.
And in fact, I just saw him several nights ago. He's 80.
Oh, so he's still going strong, it sounds like. Good.
Still going strong and still talking about our first trips together.
Very nice.
Reminiscing.
Sounds like great memories.
Yeah, really good. And so during my teens, I was kind of pretty active. Still didn't have a driver's license until I was 17, but, people took me around. And
Sure.
I did a big year in the state started when I was a junior in high school. And the goal in those days was to get the 400 in California. It was pretty difficult.
I bet.
Not many had done it then. This is before the age of the internet. And
yeah, no eBird.
cell
I mean,
phones.
even there was not even a hotline. Probably just a phone tree.
Right. There's just a phone tree, and some people are on it, and some people were not. And often you read about a rare bird, 6 months later in North
Sure.
American Birds magazine.
Yeah.
And people tended to bird the same hotspots over and over again. So a lot of hotspots that are known now were really not known in the 70s.
Right.
People just birding just only a few places. So it's good. And on the final day, December 31st, I did see my 400th bird
Wow.
of the year, which was my goal, was a emperor goose in Point Reyes.
Very nice.
And in the morning, I was up in Humboldt County where I'd seen the snowy owl that hadn't been seen for 2 weeks. And I was able to see that on December 31st. And then we got a phone call at the hotel in the morning after I saw the bird that there was these emperor geese in Point Reyes. So we drove down there, and right at dusk, saw the
ticked 400 just in time.
Just in time.
Yeah.
And,
Very good. 400.
That
400's a big number in any state. In our state, that's I don't even have that for a life list in Washington. That's a lot of birds up here, but it's a lot of birds anywhere.
Yep. And it was 1977, and it was a year when quite a few people tried to do a big year. And Don Roberson wrote a self-published book on it called Birders California.
Uh-huh.
And it's about that year and who did what, who saw what birds. And how many.
Doesn't he have the website, Who Was Who in California, that website or something?
Yeah,
I think
he did a who's who of birders, sort of the golden age,
Right.
1959 to 1980.
Yeah.
84.
I think it was. I talked to Bruce LeBar when I had him on the show about that, and his pictures in one of the pictures. He's not like you. He didn't make the I think 40 or 50 people on the site, but still pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's kind of a little capsule snapshot of what birding was like in those days. Yeah. Everybody had long hair.
Yeah, I see those pictures. Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, memories.
And then after that, I went to Humboldt State University because it was a great birding area, and they did have a wildlife program.
Mm-hmm.
And about a month before I went up there, I told the guy that I was going to school there, moving up there, and he said, "Well, John, I don't believe they're finding all the birds that are really there. So I really want you to get out there and really find out what's really up there."
Okay.
So that was a real big incentive for me, and to get up and just bird my brains out.
Yeah, I saw
which I did.
There's a page on your website, or one of your websites, the Humboldt 400 Club. I looked at that yesterday. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So it was great up there. I lived there for 12 years. I went to school. I actually I studied wildlife biology, but I ended up with a degree in English literature, and
Okay.
I also studied philosophy. So I sort of had a prong approach to my academic career and interests, and I worked my way through school working for the Redwood Sciences Lab,
Uh-huh.
and it was a Forest Service research station that was right next to the university, and I was able to band birds and training banders,
Uh-huh.
and able to catch quite a few vagrants in the nets, including a couple Connecticut warblers
Wow.
and a fairy warbler and a painted bunting, and it was a real
Made
blast.
you realize
And
what the heck is going through here. Sure.
exactly, because nobody had banded there before, and then spent the summers in the Six Rivers National Forest studying foraging behavior of different species of birds, especially in pidnax flycatchers and
Wow.
other things,
Cool.
and kind of kind of based myself there until I was 31 years old, 1991,
Okay.
and did a lot of trips to Latin America with different groups, usually friends. First one was to Costa Rica with a lot of hotshot birders and ornithologists. They're all professional ornithologists now.
Sure.
And then got a job at Explorers Inn in Peru, which was the first um, eco lodge in southeastern Peru in the
Oh,
Amazon,
okay.
which is the highest diversity of birds in the world.
Sure.
And I went there for my first 3.5 months, and I overlapped with Ken Rosenberg, who's one of my mentors.
Uh-huh.
And we worked together at the Redwood Sciences Lab, and he ended up getting his PhD at Louisiana State University.
Uh-huh.
And so he was doing his doctoral field work at Explorers Inn at the time. And he knew the birds really well, so he trained me, and which was a godsend because
Yes.
there are 600 species of birds recorded there, and almost all of them are land birds in just 1,500 acres.
Wow.
And you have to know the calls, you have to know the behavior, and a lot of that are just you don't find in field guides. In fact,
No, you
a
just
lot
have
of
to get
birds
out
were
there
not
and learn it.
right. And the only field guide at the time was for Colombia, so there are quite a few species that were not even in any field guide at all.
Yeah.
And so that was great. And then I went back the following year for another 3.5 months, and Ken was also there. We overlapped for about a month and a half at that time too, and just a wonderful experience. I found the second to last day I was there, I found the first record for Peru, and this is after going to the same areas over and over again for 7 months.
Wow.
And tells you how rich the area was for birds. You can expect a new bird at any moment.
Really.
And
That's just got to be exciting.
also really, yeah, extremely exciting. And after that, I went to Ecuador and spent 3 months at a time down there working with Niels Krabbe, Robert Ridgely, Paul Koopmans, Paul Greenfield, and all the top people working in Ecuador at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of a who's who of birding in that region. And so did some collecting for museums, but most of it was just observational work, getting foraging behavior, just getting species lists for areas where there was just no lists.
Sure.
And very little research. So that was very exciting. And one of the trips we went down to this area in the Amazon, which had never really been explored before by ornithologists, and this ecotourism company was in the process of building a series of two or three lodges
Right.
in this general region. So they paid for us to go down there and try to generate a preliminary bird list so that they can use for their marketing.
Right.
And so it was very exciting. And one of the birds we found was we heard this little call note, and Paul Greenfield was the first one to notice it. It's like, what is that? And we thought, that sounds really different. We knew it was a Thamnophilus ant shrike.
Okay.
It's a large genus of ant shrikes. but it sounded a little bit different from anything else we've heard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I pulled out my tape recorder and I taped it and I played it back, and it gave back a double note call,
Mm-hmm.
which we knew was different from anything else.
Right.
And at that time, we thought this could be the coach antshrike, which is only known by a single specimen of a female
Oh,
that was
wow.
collected in the early 1930s.
Wow.
And in fact, and it was never seen again. The males were unknown. And the year before we were there, this is 1991. And the year before, there's a paper published about some of these weird single specimen species, and they basically concluded it was probably just a hybrid.
Oh, okay.
And so then I played that double note call back and then gave a full song. And at that point, we knew this was either a brand new species or it was a coach antshrike.
Right.
And we went in, we collected the male, and then we went back. We found that they were fairly common in this area. It's all flooded forests. We had to take canoes, everywhere because there's no dry land.
Right.
There's almost no dry land. And so we found that they were fairly common in this area, and they were only found in dense vegetation overhanging rivers and overhanging oxbow lakes, so they had to be actually over the water.
Oh, my.
And it was very kind of interesting little niche.
Pretty specific niche. Pretty specific niche.
And so that was a huge excitement. We just rediscovered that bird, and it turns out that there was one at this other lodge that had been built in several years before that, called La Selva. It's a famous lodge now. And the naturalists realized, they had been hearing that bird there, but they just assumed it was one of the common antshrikes.
Right.
And so the bird was a little more widespread than previously thought. And also on that same trip, we found several second and third, fourth country records for Ecuador as well.
So I bet the Echo Lodge people were pretty happy with you guys.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the lodge where we found that bird was burned down by locals just when it was almost finished.
Oh.
And so the company decided not to try to rebuild.
Yeah.
There was a sign that they really weren't welcome there. This is really out of the way area. The locals were basically a half a generation removed from
no contact
tradition and cannibalism.
Ooh.
So it was, pretty remote.
Yeah.
And
maybe a place you don't need an eco resort.
Exactly. And so it was, that location was also the most amazing location for South American parrots and macaws.
Oh, wow.
We had 27 species there, and there are thousands and thousands of parrots and macaws. We had flocks of like 300 blue and gold macaws, or blue and yellow macaws, hundreds and hundreds of red and greens, and several hundred scarlet macaws, all in this area. And all the trees were fruiting at the time. And
so it really brought them in.
Originally who'd written the Birds of South America books, and they actually did his PhD work on parrot conservation in South America. So this is by far the best spot he's ever been to for parrots.
Wow.
And it was just extraordinary. Also because it was remote, we had Salvin's curassow, which is a lifer for everybody on the trip.
Good.
And these are big birds that are usually some among the first birds that are hunted out when people move into an area with guns, because they're large and good eating. So it was a testament to its remoteness and the wildness that we had those birds. So
really cool. So you got some intense tropical experience at a young age. Gosh.
Yeah, and I continued that, and then uh, then further, a little bit later, right after that, I moved to Bolinas, California. It's a magical place. It's where Point Reyes Bird Observatory
Oh,
was
okay. Yes.
headquartered, and where a lot of people that I admired lived there, in a really great community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I lived there for a year, and uh, shortly after, when I was there, I got a phone call from Russ Greenberg, who had hired me a couple of years before to work in the Yucatan Peninsula for a month,
Okay.
and we were looking at foraging behavior differences between white-eyed vireo, which is a migrant there,
Sure.
a winter visitor, and mangrove vireo, which was resident, and they're in the same habitats. Even though it's called a mangrove vireo, they're really not found in mangroves there. They're found in kind of shrublands, brushy areas.
Okay.
And so I spent a month there with we had John Terborg and Mercedes Foster, who are two leading ornithologists. Were also part of the crew. So it was me and Russ Greenberg and these two other just absolutely amazing ornithologists. And we went to all these different Mayan ruins because that's where the habitat was.
Right.
And it was just a wonderful month-long experience. And so the following year, Russ contacted me and said, "Well, I want you to go to Chiapas, Mexico, and figure out a study design to determine kind of relative abundance and distribution of birds in the state." So
Wow.
at that time, point counts were kind of a fairly new thing, and so I thought I'll just do an approach. I'll just do as many point counts in as many habitats in three different elevation zones and as possible.
Right.
And so I did that for 2 winters, and I had a field assistant my second winter, and I had a car, and got paid to just drive around. And every morning I did point counts in a certain habitat in one of the three elevation zones, and explored the entire or most of the state. And it was just absolutely fantastic experience. My Chiapas work was just prior to the Zapatista Revolution, which meant that I was able to pretty much explore everywhere in the state, and just drive all the dirt roads, and not have to worry about any insurgency or sensitive property issues.
Very nice.
And yeah, so it was just a wonderful experience. And so going back to that, while I was in Bolinas, I got a call from Russ Greenberg, who was the person who hired me to do that work,
Right.
and he said he has good news. The first is that the Congress approved the funding for the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center,
Oh,
and he was chosen to be there, hired as the director, and he had a position to fill that he wanted me to apply for.
very nice.
And I said yes, so I applied for that and got the job. And the other news, harken back to when we were first birding together or working together in the Yucatan. He had asked me if the money is no object, what project would I want to do?
Right.
And I said I would want to do study the community structure of comparative community structure of birds in boreal forests around the northern hemisphere. And his head hit the roof of the car he was driving. He couldn't believe it because that's exactly what he wanted to do.
Wow.
So it was just unbelievable that we both had the exact same idea. And so the other question that he gave to me is that, well, even if you don't apply for the Smithsonian job, he also got a MacArthur grant as one of those Genius Awards.
Right.
So our Boreal Forest project has all the funding. So I said yes to both, and the following year, 1993, the year after Glasnost,
Oh, yes.
we found ourselves in the middle of central Siberia on the Yenisei River with Russian ornithologists and our colleague Sam Drogi, who's a mutual friend of ours, and he ended up running the breeding bird survey program for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and later
Very nice.
USGS.
So you switched from
And
the wintering grounds to the breeding grounds.
yes, so we spent a summer there, the following summer in Northwest Territories in Canada, and then the summer after that in European Russia,
Way cool.
and the final summer in Northern Ontario.
Wow.
And plenty of black flies and biting flies and mosquitoes, and I've got the blood stains on all my field notes to prove it.
I'm sure.
But it was worth every drop of blood. It was just a fantastic experience.
It sounds like it. Sounds like it just kind of got your career off from doing really well to really doing well.
Yes, yeah, and it was one of those things. I had met Russ Greenberg. I was unemployed. I was looking at grad schools. I was looking at maybe going to the University of Texas at Austin, studying philosophy. And I went to the American Ornithologists Union convention in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a cheap $199 round trip flight that I got somehow. And I walked into the elevator with Ken Rosenberg, my buddy from Amazon and
Right.
Nova Sciences Lab, and the other person in the elevator is Russ Greenberg, and I introduced myself to him. Ken said, "Oh, John's a great birder," and this position he had offered for a month in the Yucatan, and I met him in an elevator.
You met him in an elevator.
And
great things happen.
he was
Great things happen by happenstance meetings.
Yep, and that was when I was hired at the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center. I was there for 8 years, and it's the first full-time job I ever had. I actually got paid to go to meetings and
Very nice.
all that, which I never did before. I was always a temporary
Sure.
doing field work for different
The
projects.
nature of many field ornithologists' careers is hopping from part-time gig to part-time gig or temporary jobs.
And it was an exciting time, too, at the Smithsonian because the internet was just starting, email was just starting.
Right.
Windows hadn't even been invented yet.
Yeah,
In
DOS
fact, we were all on
was still a thing.
programs.
Sure.
And so I sort of taught myself computer stuff because nobody in the office really knew how to fix computers and
Right.
everything. And the Smithsonian was also kind of behind the times. They didn't really have people who with technical expertise to actually help with computer stuff.
Right.
So I kind of took it upon myself to kind of learn. And so I remember after about 2 years or so there, telling people that we all are going to switch to Windows. And people said, "No, why would I want to do that? I know exactly what I'm doing with DOS." And so I kind of forced it on them,
Yeah.
and by kicking and screaming. But
I'm sure they were happy that you did.
Yeah, and I connected everybody with wires. So we had a local system where we're all plugged into, all connected to each other.
Right.
With the computers and onto a printer, so you
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to bring your floppy disk from your office and put it onto the only computer linked to a printer.
Sure.
And then print it off. So we're all connected, and
Oh,
so
you were advanced.
It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, learning all that stuff, and then I put one of the first websites together for the Smithsonian. So I was actually on the IT committee.
Cool.
And I was not trained. I was just training myself, and there were a couple people. There's one person at the National Zoo who's really good, so he helped me a lot. And so learning how to develop websites in the very early stages of the game and all that.
Well,
so
you haven't stopped. You haven't stopped. I like your website.
Yeah.
Good. So did that, and then you've done all sorts of stuff since then. Let's go. Let's move on to your trip to China. I saw you on the Pelagic down in San Diego, and you told me about that, and I was like, oh my goodness, you are an opportunistic. Yeah, you're like a bald eagle. You know, if it's there, you'll take it.
Yeah, I don't
Opportunistic
steal
person.
anything, but yeah, I am opportunity. I always look for opportunities. That's how I'm now independent. I have my own company,
I know.
and
Yeah.
so I have to look for opportunities for things. And uh, so I was talking to a friend of mine who does a lot of international trips and brings groups to different countries. And he's telling me about this guy in China. And a couple of days later, he sent me his contact. There was a website. So I went to the website and was reading about the tours, and then noticed this thing called the Longzhou Bird Race. And so I was reading about, this would be kind of fun. And then read a little bit more, and they said that the government, the Chinese government, pays for everything once you're there. You know, once you fly into the country,
Hard
you
to
get
hard to beat that
car
price.
drivers, yeah, everything, the food, the hotels, everything. And so I thought, oh, that would be fun. And thinking that's probably $1,500 airfare. I went online and I looked up the airfare. It was $393 round trip from
Wow.
LA.
Very
And
cool.
so I thought, oh, this is a no-brainer. So I contacted Gary Nunn, who's a good travel companion. He does a lot of international trips and studies hard and knows the birds before he goes to a place, and
Mm-hmm.
which is the kind of person I like to bird with.
Sure.
And so I'm kind of the same way. We've been birders since we were little kids, so we've been dreaming about these birds most of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And he also as a scientist, he's a geneticist, and he did the phylogeny of seabirds
Oh.
with DNA work. And we actually overlapped the Smithsonian briefly, but we didn't know each other, actually meet each other at the time. And then Craig Swalgard, who's been on a Morocco tour and two of my Paraguay tours, and
Okay.
is a really great person, really relaxed, easygoing, great travel companion. And he's retired, so I called him, and he said, "Yeah, I'll go." So that was our team, 3 people, and then the Chinese person guide. He said he'll be on our team,
Okay.
and
Cool.
because we need a translator because we have these Chinese drivers, and we have to be able to communicate with the drivers. So
Right.
he'd be on our team as well.
Good.
And so it's and then, but I realized that I had discovered this 3 days before the deadline
Oh my
to
goodness.
apply. So I immediately wrote to them and I said, I'm bringing a team. I didn't know who yet, but I knew I was going to get some people.
Mm-hmm.
And it all worked out. We had to get visas, and we had 2 weeks to plan,
Wow.
which meant we didn't have time to really learn all the bird calls,
Sure.
go online the calls. But we did get time to get our visas, get our airfare, and then buy the new field guide to the birds of Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
And the reason why we got that book, it's just been published in December, and I actually bought it in December when it's published, but the other two needed to get it. And the reason why that was important is because the bird race, this competition, was right on the Vietnamese border,
So it might as well have been
in
Vietnamese birds. Yeah.
southernmost China. So that was the most relevant book, and the area was just fantastic. It's all limestone karst topography, so it's just like Guilin, which is a very famous area, just a little bit north of there in China,
Okay.
where a lot of tourists go. This spectacular scenery with these big, tall mountain towers, and everywhere we looked was just gorgeous and really misty. It rained, actually rained half of each day of the bird race. The
Oh,
bird race
okay.
was 3 days long,
Right.
and the goal was to see as many species in Longzhou County in 3 days,
Okay.
and which meant going right to the Vietnamese border, and I actually found a really good bird there called a golden his cisticula,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of blew everybody away. And our team got an award for that find,
Very
and
nice.
all the Chinese birders wanted copies of the photos and everything. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And there are 22 teams. 20 teams were Chinese, our team, and then there was a European team, two
Okay.
Dutch birders and a Spanish birder.
Uh-huh.
And they won, and we came in second place.
Oh, wow. So
And,
you showed those
I think
Chinese
we would have done
guys.
better. Yeah, I think we would have come in better, but one of the guys the Chinese guy on our team, not the original person who's going to be on, but he had to drop out. But we had another guy come in, and he started late. He wanted to start 7:30 in the morning. He wanted like a 2-hour break for lunch the first day.
What kind of big day birder is that? Yeah.
It was not. He was not. Didn't seem to realize that it was actually a competition. It was a race.
Yeah.
So the second day we said we're not stopping for lunch at all. And then the second day our driver got lost.
Oh boy!
Taking an hour and a half to go instead of taking an hour and a half to go into the Vietnamese border, it took us 4.5 hours.
Oh, ouch!
So by noon we had seen no birds at all. And we didn't realize it until we were on the drive back. We got back in an hour and a half. It's like, well, what happened? And then our Chinese interpreter said, well, the driver got lost. We all got lost. We all got lost. He got lost.
Yeah. Well,
so
that
didn't really help our team much.
It didn't help, but it's good for the story. It's good for the story.
Yeah. Yeah. And so next year the competition is going to be in November, and it's going to be 5 days, and it's going to include 2 days in Vietnam.
Oh my!
And so really excited about doing it, and I know what Chinese guide to get and what driver.
Exactly.
To get. So
you're a veteran now.
I already have that one. Yeah.
You're a veteran.
And I was really amazed by the hospitality of the Chinese and the amount of time and money and effort they put into this bird race. And
yeah.
The reason why they started the bird race was back in 2005. There was a new species of bird discovered there called the Nongong babbler.
Right, I saw about that.
Yeah, and it was formally described in 2008, and so 3 years ago they started or 2 years ago they started, or 3 years, the first bird race, and it was for 1 day, and they said that was not enough time. So last year they had 3 days. This year 3 days, and in 2016 the Nongong babbler is also found right on the border in northern Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
And so this year during the opening ceremony, which we had 3,000 people attend the opening ceremony.
Oh my goodness!
We had speeches from the top government officials all the way down to the natural resource manager for the county, all talking about the beauty of birds. The entire structure. Everybody there was all into what we love. Birds.
They were excited about it. That's great.
And they had top-notch entertainment afterwards.
Oh my goodness!
It was unbelievable. So they had singing and dance productions and all kinds
no time
of
to
stuff
rest,
going
huh?
on.
No time to rest.
It was like we look at it, we were all laughing and we're looking at each other like, are we at the Academy Awards or what? I mean, it was just incredible. It's just all about birds. And
very cool.
So it was amazing. And each car, there are 22 teams. Each car had a number for our team number. So when you're driving around, you see around the county, you see cars.
See your competitors in their numbered cars. Yeah. Can't tell the players without a program.
And there were lots of media attention, lots of Chinese media. So we had TV cameras on our team because we were foreigners,
right?
And people photographing us, people wanted selfies taken with us.
Very crazy.
All these different media folks out there, and I have photographs of them taking photographs of me. It was like being a celebrity.
It's pretty cool.
Incredible.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sounds like you had a great time.
They're all, and during this whole event, they had a translator translating in real time in English
Oh my goodness.
for the 3 Europeans and the 3 North Americans. So 6
The
people out of
six
the
of you were
3,000
there.
people.
Yes, they did
And
it right.
just wonderful, just wonderful. And then they had a closing ceremony, and all the teams got awards and certificates, and we got these little backpacks, and they had books of printed of all for just top-notch
Wow.
photography of all the main birds in the area,
Very cool.
and we had copies of that, and they had brochures of routes to take for the bird race.
Okay.
It was all in Chinese. It was worthless for me,
Yeah.
but
Hopefully your driver could
totally
use it.
set up. Drivers, they gave us packets of this sort of the semi-sweet bread, so we can have snacks in the car.
Mm-hmm.
You know, between meals.
Right.
And we each had like a bag of oranges as well, and bottled water and everything. So
Very
we
good.
had snacks.
Very good.
It was incredible.
Sounds like just like the opening ceremonies to the Chinese Olympics, kind of over the top the whole thing. Really cool.
It was over the top.
Really cool.
We were giggling, and it was just we just couldn't believe everything was happening.
Well, it sounds
really
like everything rolled good.
Yeah. And it's also interesting is they have all these signs along the road saying, "This is the Longzhou birding base. Don't honk your horn." If there are birds along the road, they didn't want people honking the horn to scare the birds, right?
Right.
And there's a couple of villages. They actually put a lot of money into these villages for ecotourism, for building up birding.
Right. Obviously, that's why they've got you there. But still,
source of income. Exactly. So the little hotel we stayed in was called the Green Magpie Inn, and everything was clean, just beautiful, and this beautiful karst topography, and it was just everywhere you looked, you want to take a photograph because you couldn't believe the scenery.
I'm going to put in, John, if anyone wants to see a lot of these photographs, they're on your website. I'll leave a link to the exact place in the podcast notes. But it really, some beautiful birds and some beautiful places.
Yep. And one of the things that the locals are doing is they set up bird blinds for photographers.
Oh, okay.
And in the forest. And so I think we were told there are 30 different blinds. We only saw 6.
Wow.
On the trip. And the locals, so they'll make a little bird bath, and they'll have these like a little open area so the light's a little bit is good.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll throw out mealworms.
Oh, okay.
Daily.
Right.
And so the birds will come in, and they'll actually go out and they'll do a little whistle and throw out mealworms, and the birds will come in because they'll hear the whistle.
Right.
They know that the guy's throwing out mealworms.
They know they're going to get fed.
Sit there and photograph these birds that you would almost have very little chance of seeing.
Yeah.
If you're out on your own, walking through this incredibly dense forest with all this limestone, steep hills, and everything.
Very hard to see things, I'm sure.
Yeah. So and you pay the farmers. You pay them money to use
access the blind,
and it's a significant source of income for them because they're the farmers they're farming sugarcane. So it's all sugarcane, kind of in between the karst limestone.
Okay.
It's all sugarcane.
Wow. It sounds like a fabulous experience, John. Sounds like you made a good choice.
Yes, and looking forward to going back next year.
That's good to hear.
And promoting it.
Yeah.
Seeing if we get other teams.
That's one of the reasons I asked John here. I'll see what I can do to promote it. That sounds great. Do you have other trips planned for the year? And I know you're busy with your research and other things, but I know you organize tours, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I've got a trip to Guyana. I need one more person to go, and that's going to be in September this year. I'm taking a small group up to Barrow, Alaska for 4 days of photography.
Okay.
And I'm bringing a group of 13 people on a repositioning cruise from San Diego to Vancouver, and to set up scopes on the deck of a cruise ship and look for bunch of rare birds.
Rare pelagic.
Out
So
in the ocean.
I did one of those, and they are. It's you get out there. There's no other way to see these birds. You got to get far out. So it's pretty
Exactly.
good.
And
Pretty
then
good.
next year, I've got planning a El Triunfo tour in Chiapas, Mexico, to look for the horned guan and Esplendic quetzal
Right.
in March, and then a trip to southern Morocco and western Sahara in early April.
I'm excited.
And then
I'm going to
Bolivia.
Morocco this year, so I'm really
It's
excited about that. Yeah.
it's a fantastic place in every way. The food is great, culture, everything,
Yeah.
scenery, the birds.
I'm
It's wonderful.
super excited.
It's one of my favorite places. And then Bolivia in July, and then I usually do Paraguay tour, but my Paraguay guy and I decided let's do northern Argentina, and we'll go from Iguazu Falls, do all the Atlantic Forest, go down to Ibarra Marshes, and then fly over to the base of the Andes and do the Chaco in northern Argentina, and then go up in the Andes in the Yungas and the high mountains.
So you're mixing it up from your usual routine. That's always good too.
Yeah, and we'll see birds that you can't really get in Paraguay, but we've got stakeouts of some really rare birds in Argentina.
Very cool.
That we'll get. So looking forward to that.
Terrific. I wanted to ask you, how did it work out? When I saw you on the boat, you had a new camera, a new mirrorless camera, and I've heard a lot about those. How did that work out with that? The pictures certainly look good. What was your experience?
I'm having a hard time with flight photography, flight shots. I need I know people who have this camera. I need to get some pointers on what settings to use for that. But other than that, it's really a nice setup. It's lighter than my Canon gear that I currently have. I have
right.
the Canon 5D Mark IV and the 400DO Mark II. So it's about 2 pounds lighter, and it's much smaller, but it's really solidly built. So it's heavier than it looks, and but still it's nicer on my shoulder.
Yeah, it's an Olympus sort of model, isn't it? I think I saw.
It's the Olympus M1 Mark II, I think is
okay.
And then the Pro 300 f4 lens with a 1.4 extender, and it's really good. There's a Facebook page for people using that gear.
Okay.
And I've been hearing lots about it, and I talked to Keith Barnes, who's a bird tour leader, international bird tour leader, lives in Taiwan. He's from South Africa, but he goes all over the world. And he was just telling me, he was raving about it. And then I saw the results of people using it, and was really impressed. It has image stabilizer in the camera and another image stabilizer in the lens.
Oh, so
you have about 6 or 7 f-stops worth of image stabilization, which is just fantastic.
Really good, yeah.
And so using it in some of these conditions in China where it was really dark and rainy, or in really in shaded areas as well, I was able to do fairly well with it. And you can go to my website and see the results.
Yeah, fairly well is an understatement. I saw some of the pictures; they're pretty darn good.
Yeah,
pretty darn good.
Yeah, there's some where there's a little bit of noise. I had to tamp down the graininess and noise a little bit. I think my Canon camera would have done better. It's a full frame, better processor. But all in all, this setup is good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it worked out well for you. It was kind of it just looked different. Looked like almost armored. It just looked like it was really solid and small. It's kind of cool.
Very solid. They claim it's one of the most water resistant cameras out there. So there's no problem with the rain. It's also another feature is that there's no shutter noise.
Yes, I noticed that.
So you have to be careful when you push the shutter down. you
Not to
can
come home
actually
with 20,000
top
photos.
10,
Yeah.
yes, hit 10 shots without really knowing it. They have an option. We can have what's called a mechanical shutter. I'm not sure if it's really mechanical, but it makes a little
Makes
bit
a
of a
little
noise.
noise. Yeah.
And I use that, and it's so silent compared to other cameras that I usually use that just so I have an idea of when I'm actually
So I
taking a
have an
shot or
idea of how many
getting.
pictures you just took. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really really quiet. So
That's
it's
cool.
handy.
That's cool.
Handy
Yeah.
here, yeah.
It's good to have options. Good to have options. So, John, I'm going to kind of wrap up with let you sort of pitch what you've got going. How can people get a hold of you? What sort of things do you want to invite people to look at? That sort of thing.
Okay. Well, one thing that I wanted to say before the interview ended was the importance of mentoring young birders. And since I had really good mentors when I was a kid, I try to mentor young birders as much as I can, and I want as many people out there to do so. Reach out. There are a lot of kids out there who want to be birders, but haven't quite met the right person that could be outstanding lifelong birders, but they don't meet the right person.
Just need the
They don't
right
meet the local
encouragement, the right opportunity. That's
yeah.
a great
They don't
message.
understand. Yeah. So super, super important. Reach out to high schools, junior highs, etc., elementary schools even, and do that. So what do I have going on now? I've been monitoring birds at the Kern Water Bank for the last 8.5 years. It's an area down in the southern San Joaquin Valley of California, and right now they have 7,800 acres of wetlands, and during the droughts it's all dry.
Okay.
So I've been monitoring the upland birds, the raptors, and the water birds, and it's a very flat area, very few trees, a few cottonwoods, and a few willows. And I've had over 220 species of birds there.
Wow.
And including some birds that are not normally found in the area. Lucy's warbler, Virginia's warbler. I had one fall. I had 5 different vermilion flycatchers, and just had a glaucous gull there a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Good stuff.
The 4th. So yeah, all sorts of really interesting birds. You never know what to expect there. And what's really neat though is we have a large population of loggerhead shrikes. So right now, I just did a count 2 days ago, and there's 27 pairs of loggerhead shrikes there.
Wow.
And I've had up to 90, a little over 90 individuals in winter.
Wow.
So it's a neat area.
Yeah, they should be coming back to our area any day now.
Yeah. And that's my main work right now. And I had just finished 2 years of surveying lesser and greater scoff in redheads throughout California.
Okay.
Found some interesting results there. And
do you have? You're going to publish some of that? I'm assuming. Are you going to have links to that on your website, or how would people find that sort of information?
Yeah, I'll be putting links on my website to publications.
Good.
And I'm involved with the Central Valley Bird Club. I was president for 9 years and vice president for 7 years, and now I'm just a regular board member. But I heavily involved with that club. We have a symposium every year, the Thursday through Sunday prior to Thanksgiving in Stockton at the hotel, and it's a really well attended event. We pattern ourselves after the Western Field Ornithologist. And
okay.
We have science session that's accessible to the public, that any birder can. It's not too technical. We don't talk about DNA and all that stuff. Yeah. So it's more of a field ornithology oriented club, and try to interface field ornithology with the birding community and conservation as well.
That's nice.
And yeah, we have a journal, quarterly journal, and I publish in that a lot of my writings.
Very nice.
And Yeah. And I'm also involved with the Western Field Ornithologists, their Western Birds Quarterly Journal,
Right.
and I'm the editor for the featured photo. So if you have an interesting photo, you need to
I
write
don't think my photos will
a
be
little.
competitive for that, but that's cool.
Well, it doesn't have to be great, but they're interesting.
Yes.
And so you write a little paper describing what's in the photo, why it's interesting, and I edit that and we get those. So
Very nice.
busy with that. Working with Audubon Society, I did a lot of work with them on bird guide training programs, developing an advanced curricula.
Oh, yeah. I know
The
that that's
basic,
been a big move of theirs, especially in the tropical Americas. Yeah.
right. So I was hired. I got the contract to develop the curricula, a basic and an advanced, um, for their program, and they started with Belize, Bahamas, Guatemala, and Paraguay.
Okay.
And so I got Alvaro Jaramillo and Floyd Hayes on my team.
Oh,
A
wow.
really great team.
A star
And
team, yes.
we had a chapter on bird biology, chapter on bird conservation in the tropics, a chapter on biodiversity and taxonomy, um, chapter on science technique, field techniques for scientists.
Okay.
Because we only wanted these guys to be trained not only to guide tourists, but they could also get employment as field assistants for foreign researchers.
All right. Good.
And my goal was not only the first step is get them to become good guides, make them good guides, and then field assistants, but also become leaders in conservation, community leaders, and people that could be looked up to in these poor rural communities, that people who were getting paid to do this advanced work as a professional career, and hopefully have influence over the community on local conservation.
Right. So that's admirable work, John. Keep it up.
Yeah, main thing. Yeah. So that project ended, and they had courses in each of those 4 countries, and they also branched off into Colombia and had courses there. And then a colleague of mine who just retired from Fish and Wildlife Service, she used that curriculum, the advanced curriculum, to train guides in the Congo,
Oh,
in
wow.
these national parks where the gorillas in the mist,
right,
and some other national parks, and so it's being
exported to other continents. Good for you.
Yeah, and the advanced curriculum was really intensive, and it was over 450 pages by the time we finished it, and so it's really comprehensive. Talks about group management and how to identify birds in general, pitfalls, all sorts of stuff. So it was a really fun project to work on.
I bet it was. Teaching is always fun. It's stuff you have a passion for, and obviously you have a passion for birding. That's really nice. Good work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, John, thanks so much for being my guest on the Bird Banter podcast. It's always fun to talk to people who are passionate and have done things that I can only dream about doing, and I really appreciate it. I'll make sure I have links in the podcast notes to your website and any of the other things that I can find that you talked about, and thanks so much for being on.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I have to say, one of the things I really enjoy about hosting the Bird Banter podcast is talking to people like John Sterling. People who have great stories to tell, who have tremendous depth of knowledge, and lots of experiences that are fun to share. Hope you enjoyed. If you might remember, I told you I'd play a recording of Brewer Sparrow, the sparrow that swallowed a canary. Here's a song from the Sibley app. Makes you wonder how a little bird can sing so long. Anyway, birds have special respiratory tracts. That's another topic. Anyway, thanks for listening, birders. Until next time, good birding, good day.